Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
There's some interesting things that you may want to chew on in the course of the programme. A third of 16 to 22-year-olds say that they are either gay or bisexual, and simultaneously nearly three-quarters of women with school-age children now have jobs. Societies don't usually change with a bang, do they? They sort of change with a whimper, a slow incremental shift from what was previously the status quo to, suddenly, not suddenly, I beg your pardon, to slowly a completely different universe. And I wonder whether something similar is happening politically. I'm kind of thinking a lot, or been thinking a lot about a couple of conversations that popped up during last week's programme. I forget precisely when. I think it may have been in the aftermath of one of our conversations with Alistair Campbell. And there are a couple of brilliant callers who just sort of kept using this word centrist, which I'm not entirely clear on the meaning of, because it kind of denies the old left-right dichotomy. Are you politically homeless? I'd love you to call me now, regardless of where you sit historically. And just tell me whether or not you currently feel unrepresented. If I was toying with the idea of setting up a political party, what would it need to do you think, to plug a gap? It's really, really odd at the moment, isn't it? Because you can, if you look at Brexit, you can find yourself in bed with people with whom you would disagree on almost every other subject, but with whom you will agree on this. I've noticed from Twitter that I'm now retweeting criticism of Brexit by Leave campaigners more than I'm retweeting criticism by Remainers. That's the next chapter. The big fight is about whose fault it is that it's going wrong, not about whose fault it is that we did it in the first place. That chapter possibly will never be written, or it will be written decades hence. And then, sort of in other areas, if you lean towards the notion that the redistribution of wealth, which is one of the cornerstones, I suppose, of left-wing politics, needs to be addressed quite urgently, we seem in the last 20 years to have drifted into a period of almost unparalleled inequality. Certainly in the terms of the 20th century, we seem to have taken backward steps since the end of the Second World War. Who would you vote for now? Because an awful lot of people sort of think that if you lean to the left, you must like Jeremy Corbyn. But if we know anything about Jeremy Corbyn, it's an awful lot of people who would traditionally see themselves as Labour voters have even bigger problems with Jeremy Corbyn than people who traditionally see themselves as Conservative voters. And then you sort of look at the Conservative Party, and how do you feel about the current Conservative Party if you actually are quite outward-looking and quite modern thinking and quite, I suppose, small c conservative in the context of our relationship with our most powerful and most important trading partners? The Conservative Party's gone peak Brexit. It's in many ways turned into UKIP at that end of the party. So UKIP people feel represented in politics because they've got Boris Johnson flying the flag for them. What they'll do next is anybody's guess, but what you will do next is what I want to know. I feel, I make no apologies for telling you this, it shouldn't come as a big surprise, I feel utterly homeless politically. There is not a mainstream political party leader who speaks for me in any meaningful way, shape or form. And while I've never been a fully paid up member of anybody's political project, I've voted in my life in major elections for all three of the major parties, I don't think I've ever felt quite this unrepresented. It may be that, like everybody else, I'm just looking through the distorting lens of Brexit and it's kind of messed up how everything looks. Or it may be that we are at a really significant passage in British political history. I don't know. I guess I need to count. I need you to tell me whether or not you recognise what I describe. And how would that new party look? What would that new party look like? Why are we talking about this today? Well, because we're smack in the middle of the conference season. Tories are off to Manchester next week. The Lib Dems have had theirs. Jeremy Corbyn will call time on Labour's later today. As this programme draws to a close, so too will his speech. And I've been commissioned to write 1,500 words for it, for one of the grown-up papers, and I don't know where to start. It just has never really occurred to me quite so starkly that there's nowhere for I suspect, for a huge number of people, which is why the debate is getting so horrible, you know. It's why people like Emmanuel Macron very worried about the rise of Nazism, or the resurgence of Nazism in Germany, given a speech about that yesterday, which sort of pushed a lot of buttons, but really focused upon this sense of increasing polarization that's being sold to us, while actually, for most of us, especially if you kind of subscribe to we could surely all get along. Consensus politics, we used to call it, prior to 1979, so that there would be political division on detail, not on fundamental principle, and then you would argue over what is the best way to make sure that the poorest people in a society can be a bit better off. What is the best way to make sure that workers can't be exploited by employers? What is the best way to make sure that the country's wealth is somehow shared more equitably? Both sides, left and right, both claim that they want those things. They have very different ideas about how it can be achieved. But now we seem to have been led down the rabbit hole of identity politics, race hate. Donald Trump, absolutely, with this latest intervention on American football players, absolutely, unapologetically, just trying to whip up racial tension, racial hatred, so that his policies, his failure to do anything, to enact anything meaningful in the Senate goes unnoticed, so that the Russia collusion, the scandal, the fact that his son-in-law was doing precisely what he called for Hillary Clinton to be locked up for after arriving in the White House. It is absolute distraction tactics, and they're trying to sell the idea that we're all at each other's throats. This notion that if you're not somehow sympathetic to white supremacism, you're on the wrong side of politics, is deliberately designed to make everybody start angry, to start shouting and screaming. I don't want to shout and scream. I want to find out why people like me feel so utterly unrepresented. Give me a call if I'm describing you. And I think it would be more interesting, just for the purposes of my own strange psychodrama, if you and I would not have felt similarly politically at any other point previously in British history. It's a bit arrogant of me to presume that you've got a handle on my politics. I don't even know what my own politics are. But on sort of given issues, we might historically have disagreed a lot. It's almost guaranteed, if you listen to the programme regularly, that we have disagreed on quite a lot in the past. But why are you homeless? What's the gap? Is it all Brexit? I mean, I have to be honest and admit I could be as guilty of that as anybody else is. Just seeing everybody through this distorting lens, seeing everything through this distorting lens. But I got cross yesterday. You probably noticed when Theo gave me the lowdown on which senior Labour politicians were prepared to talk to you. I don't want to be, again, conceited enough to suggest that they should be talking to me. They should be talking to you, these senior Labour politicians. And it seems that if you have a reputation for presenting a programme that questions politicians in a slightly rigorous fashion, that they won't expose themselves to that level of rigour, left, right, and I'd say in the middle, but actually Vince Cable's always available to come on to LBC on any programme at all. So, first question is, do you feel homeless? 0345 6060 973. And then ideally, we'd start doing the big five. We'll do the when, the why, the what, the where, and the weather. Why do you feel homeless? When did you start feeling homeless? What would make you feel less homeless? And what is it that you think explains this bizarre state of affairs in Britain that sees the two major parties essentially pulling ever further to the extremes? I don't think you would argue with me, would you, whether you're a fully paid up Corbynista, or is there such a thing as a fan of Theresa May anymore? Best description I've heard of her recently from Conservative politicians is that she's like one of the dead terrorists in Die Hard, who the other terrorists use to sort of cover themselves as a human shield while they're trying to shoot Bruce Willis. They're dragging a body with them as a sort of form of armour and protection. But even if you were somehow that elusive character, that huge enthusiast for Theresa May's politics and performance, you'd agree that the party's gone to the right and the Labour Party's gone to the left, and there seems to be a growing gap in the middle that nobody is stepping into. I find myself wondering what differences somebody like the former Conservative MP and Times columnist Matthew Parris and I would have if we were setting up a new political party. We seem to agree on most issues, but again, maybe it is just Brexit that's distorting everything else. I look at people who essentially believe everyone deserves an equal crack of the whip. We've somehow ended up in a place where too much money has been taken out of too many companies to pay out too many dividends when it should be going back into research and development, investment, expansion and wages. And this curious conflation of zero-hour contracts, that's not a Conservative thing. Conservatives, who I count among my friends, don't want workers to have fewer rights. You've got the Boris Johnson movement to the right, the low regulation, low tax economy, which should terrify all of us. It terrifies a lot of Conservatives. Regulations are what protects, quotes, ordinary people from the excessive greed of some employers. Why are you homeless? 0345 6060973. And I mean, to be honest with you, I always make a big thing on the programme about trusting your instincts and being interested by your thoughts and opinions more than any of the professionals. Let's double down on that today. Let's really double down on that today and look at the question of whether or not the actual death throes of a party political system that's been in place, you could probably argue, since the middle of the 19th century, whether in some way it's coming to an end. I don't know why I vote anymore. I certainly, since the referendum, in the last general election, I'm not quite sure why I bothered voting. There was no party speaking for me. There was no party speaking to me. There was no party speaking about me. Where do you fit on that spectrum? And would it be fair to say, okay, I'm going to stick this out there, and then you can take pot shots at me from all sides. Would it be fair to say that the only people who feel politically represented now are the people who aren't thinking much? People who are kind of subscribing either to the Brexit means Brexit, we won, get over it, don't care how bad it is, I want it to happen anyway. On one side, you feel represented because literally, half the cabinet's dancing to your tune. And then on the other side, you've got the equally unthinking Corbynista lobby, which just sort of seems to think that he's a messiah who can wave a magic wand and change the very nature of how this country has done business for the last 50 years. It is as if you either believe, that's it, isn't it? It's just two cults and nothing in the middle. You believe. You can't explain why. That's why people hate debate so much. You can't explain why. That's what populism is, actually, if anybody is genuinely confused about that, rather than pretending. Populism is, in a nutshell, when people are concerned about things that aren't true. So you have huge efforts put in by the right-wing media to persuading people to get cross about X, Y, and Z while they're having their pockets picked, their futures diminished, and their children's freedoms sold down the river. It's not complicated, but you believe in it. I believe the Muslims want to take over. I believe the immigrants are ruining everything. I believe that Brexit means Brexit. And then you go to the other extreme of British politics. I believe that Jeremy Corbyn can rewrite the basic rules of employment. I believe that the future can be bright. I believe that we'll all have, I don't know, a bright and glittering future. I believe it. And if you ask me to explain how it's going to happen, I'll call you a snowflake, or I'll call you a libtard, or I'll call you a fascist, or I'll call you... If you actually want an explanation of how things are going to happen, and then we arrive somewhat embarrassedly at the question I'll leave you with as we head towards the break. Are we now looking at a British political landscape that essentially ignores people who think politics is difficult and detailed and mostly about compromise? You're either 100% in or 100% out. You're either 100% Labour or 100% Conservative. You're either 100% Remain or 100% Leave. Nuance has no home in British politics. Thoughtfulness, detail, difficult decisions, no home at all. Everything will be easy. Vote for Corbyn and the world will be wonderful. Vote to leave the European Union and the world will be wonderful. Vote Conservative and the world will be wonderful. That's why I feel homeless. Am I on my own? You'll allow me a brief pat on the back, because when I jump into the swimming pool like that, not knowing whether or not I'm going to be able to stay afloat, it's always a relief to reach that quarter past junction, knowing that I've made some sense. Paulos writes, summing up my feelings on the current political landscape better than I ever could. And this is possibly the greatest compliment you can pay a radio presenter, John Davis, who has just sort of gone out on something of a limb, unscripted, as always, on this programme. He said, I feel like you're in my brain. If you're just joining us, I'm just suggesting that a significant number of us feel utterly unrepresented by British politics, possibly on an unprecedented level. And phone lines are full, but that doesn't mean anything on this programme. They almost always are, but it's interesting. See how many agree with me and how many disagree. Nick is in the beautiful town of Bewdley. Nick, what would you like to say?
Well, I'd have to disagree and say I wouldn't say I'm utterly unrepresented.
I thought you were going to say Bewdley's not that nice. You should see it. Be outside the Black Boy on a Saturday night, and there's all sorts of trouble kicking off.
Well, you'd know more about that. I'm just travelling through, mate. I don't take stopping places like this for very long.
Carry on. Go on.
You need to tell your assistant how to spell Bewdley as well. I'm not utterly unrepresented. There's some fantastic stuff being said in Brighton at the moment, and there'll be some really good stuff being said wherever the Conservative Party meeting next week.
Manchester.
We've got, as you say, it's not utterly represented. That in itself is a binary statement, James. We've got to stop doing that. I know you're trying to get people to phone in.
Actually, I'm tempted to move on, Nick, because I'm not trying to get people to phone in. I'm thinking out loud, what you've done is not only insult yourself by suggesting that you're some sort of knee-jerk automaton who can be prompted to pick up the phone and ring in by me cynically seeking to push your buttons, but you've insulted everybody else who's rung in as well.
Well, you certainly prompted me to.
Yes, but that's because I provided you with some food for thought, not because I attempted cynically to make you ring in to respond to something that I've said. But you crack on, mate.
So what should we talk about? All this. Okay. So basically, you had Angela Rayner yesterday in Brighton talking about skills for our children, lifelong learning to meet the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. You've got next week Matt Hancock from DCMS will be talking about digital skills and digital literacy and technology and culture. There's some brilliant stuff going on. Look forward to hearing what Liberal Democrats have got to say. There's a lot to be said there. So what is the answer? Is it a new party in the middle with so many polarised thinking?
Well, that's what I'm asking. You're supposed to ring in and answer.
I haven't got the answers, James. I've got some suggestions and some thoughts. And for me, the answer maybe then is a hung parliament where people actually debate and find consensus.
And coalition, not in the sense of a coalition with either the Liberal Democrats or in a slightly different sense with the DUP, just kind of designed to push legislation through, but more of a European model and actually have... Well, compromise at every turn. And compromise is the opposite of binary, right? Compromise and communication is the opposite of binary, a word I use an awful lot on this programme. Gary is in Bracknell. Gary, what would you like to say?
Oh, yeah. So, thanks. Good morning, James.
Hello, Gary.
Hi. Yeah, very much subscribe to a much more inclusive process, to be honest. What I mean by that is I'm not looking for referendums every day, but I think the lack of critical thinking is something that's really missing in society right now. And I've had issues with, friends of mine, to be honest, during Brexit. It is definitely one of the big, let's say, can openers. That certainly causes a lot of where we are today. But I just think there's a lack of critical thinking, there's a lack of listening, and a lack of really hearing what someone else has to say. It seems to be that if someone's got a view, it has to be heard at all costs without listening to someone else, really.
I'd go further, actually. I think that there's a sense that a view is it's been provided or ascribed false equivalence. So I always think of climate change, or actually the heliocentrism or the flatness of the Earth. If those debates were being held now, we would, certainly at the BBC, they'd be booking two guests. One to tell you that actually there's quite a lot of people who still think that the sun revolves around the Earth, and then, Copernicus or Galileo Galilei on the other side of the studio with his actual telescope showing you that it doesn't. And that is weird, because you say critical thinking, and you, obviously, with your sort of allusion to Brexit, I think you're suggesting that people still support the idea of leaving the European Union as the evidence that it's a bad idea mounts ever more. You think critical thinking would lead everybody to where you are. I do as well, actually, but that's probably the definition of patronising.
Yeah, I challenge that a little bit, though, to be honest. I take both sides of the debate, to be honest. I do. I totally see why some people did want us to leave, and to be honest, I've sat on the fence myself in the decision. I think the issue is critical thinking. What I mean by that is not enough information on all sides and enough time for people to digest and internalise that information.
Which is why we have a parliamentary democracy. Because they're supposed to be the people that have the time and the energy and the inclination to properly absorb and properly analyse and then properly legislate, make decisions. But I think one of the things David Attenborough said yesterday, that we've completely subverted parliamentary democracy. This referendum has destroyed it. We are now insisting that members of parliament sent as delegates act in what they consider to be against their own constituents' interests, and we're going to stick them on the front page and call them enemies of the people if they don't do that.
No, it's absolutely fair challenge. No, I think the trust absolutely isn't there, and I think, as a previous, and I don't mind saying it, voted the last two elections Conservative.
Sure.
I'm absolutely dismayed, and I use May deliberately. To call as Cameron did, and then May so quickly afterwards these referendums was absolutely obscene, and I think they've completely destroyed the stability that we had.
Could you see a new party winning your vote? A kind of,
yes.
What would you call it? A compromise party? It sounds a bit weak, doesn't it?
I don't know, I call it the Gary Party. I've actually thought about this myself.
The Gary Party. You might need to focus group that one, Gary, mate. It's 28 minutes after 10, and I'm fascinated by this. I think it's the most important question I've asked you in years. Ricky Gervais takes up the theme that Gary just touched on. He tweets, the problem is people don't respect facts anymore. They push their agenda without following the evidence. Winning now outweighs truth. And this is what Emmanuel Macron was speaking about yesterday when he talked of populism. It's the idea that you should attribute equal weight to an opinion that's based on a falsehood than you should to an opinion that's based on evidential truth. So I'd tell you who it was for me that really brought this home was Douglas Carswell. Do you remember him? And I interviewed him on a different platform once, and I paid him a grave disservice of having researched his constituency at the time down in Clacton. So when he started talking about the concerns of ordinary people and the legitimate concerns of ordinary people with regard to immigration in his constituency, I read him the number from the last census of people in his constituency that were not immigrants, and it was well over 95 or 96%, and he got furious. He tried to start a fight on Twitter, because when you say the legitimate concerns of ordinary people, and then somebody with a brain and research abilities, somebody with eyes, really, says, actually, they're not legitimate. They are concerns. You're absolutely right that they're concerns, and you can see why people are concerned. Goodness knows the amount of effort that's been put into making them concerned outweighs pretty much anything else that's happened in this country for 20 years. But they're not legitimate because 97.x% of your constituents are white British. So why are you telling them that their concerns are legitimate when you should be telling them that the reason why things aren't going great for them must be something else? And that is that, for anyone who's genuinely confused, as opposed to merely pretending to be, that is what populism means. It means that people say they're concerned about something and you say, good. You don't say, well, actually you shouldn't be because, facts. Which, again, is why Donald Trump's team have to coin the phrase alternative facts, to pretend that the people who support his kind of worldview actually have facts on their side. Here's some facts. Oh, yeah, but we've got alternative facts. And that's on one side. On the other side, you've got this slightly messianic belief that Jeremy Corbyn can deliver jam tomorrow. And if you don't buy into either of those worldviews, who speaks for you? A lot of you are suggesting I've completely forgotten about the Liberal Democrats. I should be so lucky. You're talking about Bombardier in Northern Ireland. There's nothing to say, and actually I am, in a way. The example, I mentioned a colleague this morning who came in and said, crikey, I suppose you'll be gloating on the programme today, given that you've been proved right about that nonsense regarding Donald Trump. And I said, well, I don't really gloat. And he said, no, you're right, you know what I mean. You're going to point it out, and people are going to accuse you of gloating. And I said, you're absolutely right. I'm going to point out that all of those people who said that we'd be able to trade with America and they would look after us and that would be a wonderful way to plug any gaps left in our economy by a ludicrous decision to withdraw from the most powerful and largest free market in the world, they now look like idiots. But there's no room for gloating because we are all British. We're not Northern Irish, most people listening to this programme, but you'll remember that the idea that somehow people losing their jobs, family members losing their jobs, was for a lot of Brexit voters a price worth paying to leave, means that a lot of people will look at the prospect of 4,000 jobs in Northern Ireland going down the tubes and somehow attempt to rationalise it. I won't. I think it's a bloody disaster. I hope they come to some sort of resolution. I hope Theresa May does. Regardless of my politics, I hope the current British Prime Minister can somehow persuade the current American President that a 200+% tariff on our aircraft parts is punitive. Unfortunately, I have to remind you that Donald Trump's Secretary of State for Trade described Brexit as a wonderful opportunity for America to nick a lot of our business interests, but we still have significant swathes of our own political establishment cheering Donald Trump to the rafters and holding him by his tiny little hand. So no, there will be no gloating as the evidence mounts that we are digging ourselves an ever deeper hole. Not so much, you can't blame the Bombardier thing on Brexit, but you can certainly use it as evidence that calls by Brexiters to trust America to become our new wonderful trading partner are utterly, utterly absurd. But I won't gloat because I'm not on either side. I'm on the side of Britain. I'm on the side of Bombardier workers. I'm on the side of British people who want a certain standard of living that is going to be less achievable in the coming years than it would have been in recent years. So who speaks for me politically? Jeremy Corbyn on Brexit? Meh. Theresa May? She's a Remainer, pretending not to be. For what? Reasons of self-promotion? Boris Johnson wrote 2 articles, one of which was all about why we should stay, one of which was all about why we should leave. He made a documentary for the BBC about how wonderful it would be for Turkey to join the European Union, and then campaigned on a platform that said one of the main reasons why we should leave the European Union is because Turkey's about to join. A barefaced lie. But if you can lie to your wife, you can lie to a country, as I think we all know. And that leaves who? Stuck in the middle with me. 0345 6060 973. Catherine's in Richmond. Catherine, what do you think?
Oh, hi, James. Well, I'm with you, and I feel politically homeless.
Since when?
Since when? Well, I would say since Brexit.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't, a massive fan of politics before that. I was never, really embedded into it all, but I followed and I voted, and, I'm sort of...
Yes.
I wouldn't say I was married to a particular party, but I feel since Brexit, we're spending so much time, so many resources, all this energy talking about it, and all this money on trying to sort it out. And you just wonder how
it hasn't started yet, Catherine. It hasn't started yet.
This is the problem, and it's going to go on for decades and generations ahead of us. And I just think my problem for me is there isn't a single political party who will admit to representing that view, that actually the whole thing is a waste of time. We don't even know how good it's going to be at the end of it, whether it's even going to have any good to it. And that's
really the strange thing. I mean, would it be electoral suicide for Labour to have anointed themselves with that particular kind of task, that mission? Because Jeremy Corbyn couldn't do it in good conscience, could he? He historically... I mean, it's so bizarre, because what you have... effectively is a Tory leader who's been a lifelong Remainer pretending to be a Leaver, and a Labour leader who's been a lifelong Leaver pretending somehow to be a Remainer. And that's it, isn't it? That's why no wonder we feel blinking homeless.
There's all these cross wires.
Yes, it's insane.
I wish the Lib Dems would come in and just, be the party to vote for if you think this whole thing's nonsense.
Yeah, but they've damaged the relationship with the country is irreparably damaged for at least a generation. Something that the line I keep remembering was William Hague reportedly going home to his wife after the coalition deal had been done and saying, I think we might just have finished off the Liberal Democrats. Because he knew.
Possibly. Well, sadly, Tim Farron wasn't the man to bring them back to the table,
and I don't know if there is a man or indeed a woman alive who could. It needs to be, in my view, perhaps a fresh start. But around what maypole could you get a significant number of people to dance? SDP pulled it off in the early 80s, up to a point, if it wasn't for the Falklands invasion. Some historians, some political historians contend that they could have actually won a general election. The huge boost to Margaret Thatcher that was achieved by her exemplary handling of the Falklands crisis was enough to push her over the line in 1983. But there you go, that's a bit Anaraki. Catherine, another homeless person. Dave is in Woolwich. Dave, homeless or happy?
Very much homeless. What you said, your opening line this morning struck a real chord with me. You got me right in the fields.
Good. Right in the fields. Thank you.
I was brought up sort of working class Tory, which is not an oxymoron, or certainly wasn't an oxymoron back then.
No.
And I think for me it was Grenfell. Brexit did a lot of it, but I think Grenfell was the final thing. And I stood up in front of my Conservative buddies a few weeks ago and just sort of said I've never felt less Conservative in my entire life. I look at David Cameron, he gave us the Brexit vote. I look at Theresa May, I look at Boris Johnson, who basically completely did a 180 for his own political gains. I look at Grenfell, I look at the people on £7.20 an hour, and I can't be part of it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me. You've kind of reminded, and I tried to do this in the introduction, to say that conservative worldview that does believe in protecting workers, quite a few of my more left-wing correspondents are taking me to task on that, but it's a proud tradition, that conservative tradition. Whether I might not agree with you that it works or that there's much evidence that it will work, but it's a proud tradition, that notion that conservatives can look after the workforce, can look after normal people, ordinary people.
Well, I think the thing is we have to be careful with these labels, Conservative, Labour. We have to be careful with labels like left wing, right wing. There's a big blob in the middle, okay, and those people in the middle will assign themselves possibly to one. It's kind of a binary label on a very fluid situation.
But this is the era of binary labels on very fluid situations. And you know, I wrote down two phrases just before you came on. Instant gratification and information overload. We've got so much information coming in that we think that we're qualified to arrive at completely binding 100% decisions on everything. And because of instant gratification, we think we've got to make that decision in about 6 seconds and then stick to it for the rest of our lives.
Well, this is one of the interesting things about MPs doing 180s. I'm quite happy for an MP to do a 180. Not all the time, not every day, but they say, oh, you've turned about. Yes, because the person's learned something they didn't know, and they've changed their mind, and that's okay. And this concept that you have to sort of plot a straight line course in politics or life or anything else, and you can't deviate off that course is absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, we've got a catchphrase on the programme. There's no point having a mind if you never change it. Obviously, if you're changing it every 30 seconds, you kind of lose the right to be taken seriously. But how hard is it for some people now just to say, all right, we've gone down a wrong path, let's slam the brakes on and try and find a way to get as many people as possible back onto a more attractive path? I'd like the Grenfell line, though. I mean, it's changed my politics forever, Grenfell, but in a slightly different way from you, because I wouldn't describe myself as having been a lifelong Tory. That genuinely spoke of a Victorian attitude to the poor, didn't it?
I just...
Still does.
I just, even now, I can't believe it. I can't believe the way it's been dealt with. I can't believe the way it's been handled. There is so much going on that you look at, and, how can you live on £7.20 an hour? How can anyone in London live on £7.20 an hour? How can you have any sort of quality of life? But then I look around for alternatives, and I look at Labour. I can never forgive them for Iraq. I'm quite lucky. I'd probably do a bit better than the average Joe. Am I a millionaire? No.
Yeah.
Do I worry about switching the heating on when it's cold? No. I'm in that bit in the middle. I listen to Labour, and I feel like an oligarch. I feel like the enemy. It's like, where do I go? Do you know what I mean? I've got the empathy. I've got the feeling. I understand. I've got no problems paying the tax or anything else. But it's where do you go if you're in the middle?
It's the eat the rich kind of subtext to some of what Labour seem to be moving towards that you describe. I always say that I'm supremely comfortable with people earning a lot more than I do, and I'm supremely comfortable with people earning a lot less than I do. It's the size of the gap that matters. And when you say people in the middle, that's it, isn't it? You're not in a yacht. You're not exploiting workers. You've got a problem with the paucity of the minimum wage, but at the same time, you don't want to be punished for the fact that you're keeping your head quite comfortably above water. And that is that centrism, do you think?
I think it probably is for a lot of people. I think one of the problems is Labour's never really sort of defined, or I've never heard a convincing definition of what it defines as, the good guys or the bad guys. And the problem is, I think the problem with that is when you listen to a lot of stuff, they talk about the wealthy, they talk about everything. Well, I'm doing all right. I'm not a millionaire. I'm doing all right. I'm very lucky, and I count my lucky stars every day. But am I part of the enemy? Am I part of the problem? And I've got people, like older friends, that are saying I'm too scared to vote Labour because everything I've worked for and I want to hand my kids will be taken away. And that's what their perception, whether that's right or wrong, that's their perception. And as the old adage goes, perception is everything.
Yes, it is. And I don't think that is necessarily true, or certainly no published policies would bring that about. But it's the perception, and people are going to vote according to their perceptions. There's one little thing I'll pick you up on, and it's a pet theory of mine. When you describe yourself as a working class Tory, and then you describe yourself as being lucky, because I don't think that normally goes hand in hand. I've always found the so-called working class Tory perspective to be a denier of luck, as if people who end up with more than anybody else somehow deserve it, as if it's inbuilt or hard work. Like you talk about people on £7.20 an hour. I'll do a programme condemning that, and someone will ring in on £100 an hour and tell me that it's because they work hard. I work bloody hard for mine. eye money as if you're on £7.20 an hour and you're coasting. So that to me is interesting, the fact that you can be a working class Tory and acknowledge that luck plays a role in any success that anybody enjoys somewhere along the line.
Well, if you think I'm ever going to go and look at Uber worker in the eye and claim that I work harder than them, you're absolutely kidding.
See, there you go.
I work in IT, and the internet came along at the right time, and that was luck. I had no say over that, and that is what it is, you know.
That fascinates me. It really does on every level. I could talk to you all day, but I'm already late for the break, Dave, and a couple of people getting in touch to thank you for your contribution. That's what I needed, because there's no point everybody sort of singing from the same hymn sheet. Dave and I clearly come from very different traditions politically. Both recognise the role that luck has played in putting us above the waterline, if you like, above the average, and both feeling utterly unrepresented by both major political parties. That's quite interesting. I'm putting luck on the list of things that are intrinsic to this entire conversation. Speaking of which, I don't know where the time's gone, but Dave is going, so you can have that phone line. If you're trying and failing to get through, the number you need is 0345 6060 973. Jan says, will you please stop swearing? You sound like my daughter, and I will do my best, Jan, but sometimes, desperate times, call for desperate language. Well, I don't know if it's uplifting or not. A lot of you are picking up on Dave's call just before there. I like this unsigned text. This guy right now is exactly me. Dave described himself as a working class Tory who feels as unrepresented by the current political landscape as an awful lot of people who would never in a million years dream of describing themselves thus. I wonder whether we all fall into this trap of this curious cocktail of instant gratification and information overload, so that we're all convinced we're 100% right about everything. Guilty as charged, by no means unaware of the pot kettle black element of that argument, but I do spend an awful lot of time looking for reasons why I'm wrong. I also spend 3 hours every day inviting people to tell me why I'm wrong. So I think if you look upon this as a whetstone upon which I sharpen my blades, then I probably spend more time sharpening my blades than most normal people do, certainly. And, of course, there is nothing more frustrating for people who are 100% convinced that they're right than to ring me and feel stupid in about 40 seconds flat. It might go viral on the internet, but it doesn't send people away thinking, oh, thank you, James, for helping me to see the light. It sends people away going, oh, I'm so furious, I'm going to set up 74 anonymous accounts on Twitter and troll this guy 24 hours a day, instead of going, oh, crikey, yeah, you're right. I can't name any laws. Or that was a lie on the side of a bus. Or I don't know how I could still be listening to words of comfort from people who told me that we'd be able to trade freely with America on the day that America has slapped a 220% tariff on aircraft parts. That's the thing that I think confuses me. I'm going to stop saying people like me. What confuses me is that classic, here you go, here's a duck. It walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it quacks, it's got webbed feet, it's covered in feathers. That's not a duck, that's an orange. No, I promise you it's a duck. James O'Brien dismantles man who thinks duck is an orange. And does it change minds? Well, I happen to know that it does, but it doesn't change the mind of the man that rang in. He goes away even more convinced than he was before that that's an orange. Walks like an orange, quacks like an orange, talks like an orange, must be an orange. I don't get that. And that, I think, is a result of the kind of... And that's populism, by the way. That bloke thinks it's an orange. You've got to respect the fact that he thinks it's an orange. Seriously, it's a legitimate belief that that's an orange. It might have webbed feet, a bill, and feathers, but it's an orange. He's convinced it's an orange. Treat him seriously. Take his concerns seriously. That's populism, in case there is any genuine confusion out there, which, frankly, I doubt. The alternative to that is what? I don't know. To just talk endlessly about everything and never make any decisions at all? What's the middle ground in British politics? What's on it, apart from a belief, perhaps, that Brexit was sold to us on false pretenses? Everyone can agree with that. Even if you still think it was a good idea, you know that you were lied to. Sadiq's in Ilford. Sadiq, what's going on?
Yeah, good morning. James, what an excellent call. I think he stole quite a lot of my thunder.
Yeah. People always do that. I get a brilliant call and the next person on goes, well, I think he stole an awful lot of my thunder. Of course he did. If it was a Muppet that was on before, you wouldn't be saying that, would you?
Yeah. James, I think part of the equation is also, James, have we overlooked the fact that for the last 50 years it's been the centre that's been running the show, and it's because of the centre that we are where we are, where they haven't been listening.
Go on.
Possibly. And that's not to detract from the fact that, I would identify myself as being in the centre. You could look at Iraq, you could look at Brexit. That came from the centre. It was David Cameron who's responsible for trying to save his political career that gave us Brexit.
Yes.
He's from the centre. It's Tony Blair who wanted his legacy, who's from the centre, who gave us Iraq.
Well, hang on a minute. I don't know that either of those are centrist policies. There might be centrist politicians, but they're the opposite of centrist policies. Having a binary referendum on an incredibly complicated issue, that would be extremist under any other circumstances. The mistake was, of course, that usually extremists have referendums on complicated issues, secure in the knowledge they'll get the result that they want, like Erdogan in Turkey. You don't normally get the opposite. That's where Cameron muffed up. And going to war, very few people would describe that as centrist, especially on bogus premises or dubious premises. They might be centrist politicians, but they didn't do centrist things on those two occasions.
Yes, agreed, James, but they're the authors of them. And people, I mean, it's the centre that's, privatised everything but the air in the last 50 years. And that's where that came from. So, part of I'm not saying, you're wrong in any way whatsoever. I think what I'm saying is very much part of the equation of the thought process, the lack of it, or,
what does the centre represent? And then you can come up with these awful bogeymen and say, well, that's where the centre left us, so I'm tacking to the left or I'm tacking to the right. Corbyn never would have taken us to war. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I buy it. How big do you think the centre is? Are you in it?
I'm sort of to the centre left. I love a lot of Jeremy Corbyn's policies.
Like what? Name one.
For me, for example, a lot of what he's trying to do with the National Health Service.
It's not a policy, though, is it? I mean, in terms of something that you could actually, a flag you could salute. It's a bit unfair, this, but I do it to everybody else, so I'm going to do it to you.
Reprivatising the railways and bringing some of the privatisation back.
Nationalisation. Fair enough. That was announced at conference. I mean, it's a policy that many would say hasn't been properly costed or explained, but it's a flag you can salute. So salute away. So you'd vote for them then, under most circumstances.
I would, but with some reining in reining down something that's possibly too far. On the list, but I think it's where we are. We've got where we are because of who's taken us there.
You could be right. I would add to that, and it's something that's popped into my mind reading this text from Oscar, who's in Basildon. I'm 38 years old. I've never voted in my life. Working class NHS professional, immigrant father of 2 young children. No one talks for me. I'm yet to hear a policy that will make my family's life better. All I hear are policies that are designed to make someone else's life worse. Now, say what you like about Brexit, a huge number of people voted because they thought that foreigners were going to get a slap. And that
absolutely
highlights something at the heart. I mean, what I mean, Labour don't fall into that trap. Well, I suppose you could say Labour are just going to make life worse for rich people. Could you or not?
Not necessarily,
No.
James. At no point does it mean that to look out for the rights and the better condition of those below us means that you have to slap those above us.
And also, depending on how many zeros you've got on the end of your bank balance, knocking one of them off is not going to have a meaningful impact on your life in the way that redistributing that cash, a little naive, I grant you, idealistic, would have a meaningful impact on the lives of the people in whose pockets it ends up. That's it, though, isn't it? Oscar in Basildon nails it. That's populism in a nutshell. All I hear are policies that are designed to make someone else's life worse. More on this, I think. I'm cracking on with this conversation because it seems to have touched something of a nerve. I don't know if anyone can ring in and disagree with me, actually. I'm suggesting a lot of people don't feel represented by either of the 2 main political parties in this country anymore, and for a host of reasons, historical and actual and current, the Liberal Democrats do not fill that gap. Are you in that lost middle, working class Tories and sneering intellectual lefties like me, similarly disillusioned with the way things stand? We're doing the what, but I'd also like to do the why. How has it come to this? I suspect, as Catherine in Richmond suggested, when the dust settles decades hence, it will all be about Brexit. It will all be about immigration, and it will all be about xenophobia. It is somehow 10 years spent convincing large swathes of the population that the reason why they're not doing as well financially as they thought they would be doing has nothing to do with the fact that the owners and investors in the company they work for are richer than ever before, and everything to do with the fact that their neighbour might be from Poland It's beautiful, really. Two things have happened. The first was a subprime mortgage crisis, which was designed essentially to distract us from the fact that we weren't getting pay rises. If you could borrow a bunch of money on your house, to buy a house, you could borrow a bunch of money to buy a house, even though on paper you were going to struggle to pay it back. But that wonderful sort of, what would you describe it of? It's almost an atmosphere of exuberance. This is more true in America than it is here, but I got more than 100% on my mortgage on my first flat. Imagine explaining that to someone in their 20s. You did what? You didn't have to have a deposit at all. No, I didn't just need to have a deposit. They gave me money to furnish the flat. I borrowed about 105% of the value of the flat when we moved in. Could you imagine that? I was good for it, but how many people weren't? How many people are still not really good for it, but we're not going to find out until interest rates go up? So here's the thing. I don't do conspiracy theories. I'm never quite sure what people mean when they use words like globalist. I got a fair idea what they mean. People like Steve Bannon, former partner at Goldman Sachs, describes himself as being anti-elite. I just snigger. But here's the thing. How do you distract people from the fact that they haven't had a pay rise? Make it easy for them to borrow money. Britain and America, more than anywhere else in the world. You can borrow huge amounts of money, buy a house. Can't actually afford it, but you can get your hands on the money, and we've still got a mindset that says, if they're lending me the money, I must be good for it. So that distracts us from the fact that we don't get a pay rise. Everything hits the fan in 2008, global international crisis. Same people that have been essentially pushing toxic credit now push the idea that it was all the fault of the lefties. It was all the fault of public spending. It was all giving too much money to poor people. That's how you essentially oppose something like Obamacare. It's certainly how you somehow attempt to blame Gordon Brown for the fact that people in Utah borrowed more money than they could ever hope to repay to buy houses that they couldn't actually afford. So then you get that financial crisis in place, and the same forces that brought in toxic credit are now trying to blame it on anybody else, i.e. lefties, i.e. public spending, i.e. trade unions. You need another scapegoat. And there's, as if by magic, Vladimir Putin wades into the Middle East and creates a huge refugee crisis. Refugee crisis sweeps across Europe. Right-wing demagogues, the usual suspects, try to portray it as somehow being a threat to our security and our safety, a threat to our livelihoods and our future, a threat to our children and our women folk, just as they've done since time immemorial. You don't have to go back much further than 1930s Germany to see how that works. Economic crisis, refugee crisis. Beautiful combination to create an aura, an area in which everybody except the people responsible for the mess that's been created are getting the blame for it. Yeah, and blame some child who's just arrived from Calais. You can blame some Polish pensioner who's been here since the Second World War. You can blame whoever you want. Just don't blame the people who've got their hands on the reins of power, and don't blame the people whose pockets are filling up as yours empty. Make sure you blame somebody else. So the people responsible for the credit crisis got bailed out by taxpayers. Bailed out by taxpayers. Incredible when you think about it. People responsible for the credit crisis got rewarded essentially with our money. And where are we now? Well, we are voting to be worse off, essentially, because foreigners. Oh, I can feel people. Feel their heads exploding as the reality bites, but they'll ignore it. They'll move on and they'll double down on one extreme or the other. Well, James, I think you'll find Jeremy Corbyn has got the answer to all of those economic things that you describe. He won't let the bankers get away with that kind of nonsense. No way, not Uncle Jeremy. And on the other hand, oh, shut up, you Ramoning fool. Don't you realise as soon as we get out of the European Union, we can start deporting people and everything will be great again. We'll be having cream teas in church every Sunday afternoon. Everything will be marvellous. So that's why people double down on it, because the reality is confusing and it makes us feel a bit stupid. I didn't feel stupid when I borrowed 105% to buy my first flat. But if I'd lost my job 2 years later, I would have been stupid. I'd have lost my flat. Nobody likes feeling silly. So how do you avoid feeling silly? You put on a suit of armour. You put on a suit of armour that protects you from all evidence that you're silly. It can hit you on the head with an axe, but if you've got a suit of armour on, it's just going to feel like a little tap. Put on your suit of armour, your armour of, I want to say ignorance, but then I become part of the problem, not part of the solution. Armour of what? Well, it's self-protection armour, isn't it? You protect yourself sometimes from the truth, because the truth hurts. So how do you fill that gap? I don't know. Do people want it to be filled? I envy you if you're bought in to either side of this. If you're still doing, let's have a look at the text and the emails coming in, and I'll tell you which ones I envy. Well, not this one. Macron ex Rothschild equals globalist. Loads of them, James. All right, mate, you keep taking the tablets. Agree to disagree. The debate must go on critical thinking, but if I don't like what I hear, I'll just heckle from behind the curtain. So I hope, that tallies. I mean, who do you envy? Envy people who think they've got it right. Envy people who think that life isn't complicated, that life isn't difficult, that life isn't disappointing, that success doesn't involve compromise. Envy people who genuinely think their life is going to be improved by hurting that person over there, whether they're brown or Eastern European or Catholic or whatever it may be, or Jewish, whatever it may be. Your life is not going to get better when their life gets worse. It just isn't. But hey, that's me ignoring the feelings of ordinary people. Paul's in Ammanford. Paul, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hello, Paul.
Thanks for a brilliant programme. Makes me feel sane
Thank you.
times.
Yes, not necessarily a good place to be.
I think, I'm really frustrated with the way, politics has evolved in this country and globally as well. But, here in the UK in particular, we seem to want to, more and more, we seem to want to belong to one group or another,
yes.
and then we'll defend that side to the nth degree.
It's so
and we'll
bizarre.
never ask a question.
Yes.
We'll never ask a question. We'll never say, well, okay, I'm a Labour supporter, but actually there are a few things I'm not really sure about here. I don't really agree with these. And even if you're a Tory, you'll react according to what the headlines in the Express or the Mail said, and they'll polarise.
I don't know. I mean, you're right. The tribes you describe exist. Somebody said it's not complicated, James. The country is divided along the lines of people the Daily Mail likes and people the Daily Mail hates. And there's absolutely nothing in between the two. But, I mean, how much? I mean, the Express, the Mail, they're in free fall. Their circulation is in free fall. And the vote for Corbyn completely confounded all traditional measures and all traditional observers. How do we know how big those particular tribes are? The ones who think my party, right or wrong, I will be Labour till I die, even if they sell me down the river. I don't know how you weigh up the size of those constituencies.
Yeah, well, it's difficult because what Corbyn did was he took he used social media so expertly during his campaigning, and if you look at obviously you look at Facebook, and there's always something. There's always polarising stuff on there, isn't there? From either from the right wing or even from the left wing. But
yeah, although I don't think anybody is proving at the moment that the stuff from the left wing is sponsored by and paid for by Russia and is deliberately bogus and is designed to subvert Western democracies. But your point stands.
Yeah, it's true, and I think as well. If you look at my mother's Greek and my dad's Welsh. Don't know what kind of combination that makes me. Welsh, I suppose, but. In Greece, when people, when in Greece, when there are issues and where there are challenges, people will go out on the streets and they'll protest. They're not necessarily wanting to throw the government out, but they want the government to change. Here, we just don't have that. We just seem to want to go for one thing or another, and then you get people like you and me and a lot of your callers who I think have been excellent today,
yes, they have.
who don't have anywhere to go, but we don't. Do we want to have somewhere to go? I don't want to belong to a party. I just want to be able to have some democracy in the country where we don't panic every time something goes wrong and start pointing fingers. In fact, interestingly, someone was saying to me about here in Ammanford that they wanted Brexit because of the issues with immigration, and I said, well, where are the immigrants here? I'm half an immigrant, I suppose, but there aren't any. And I said, what about my mum? Do you want to get rid of my mum?
I don't mean her. Right. She's all right. I don't mean her. I mean the people I've never met, the ones I keep reading about, the ones on the Facebook posts put there by the Kremlin.
If we went to Syria on holiday, because it happened to be a popular destination, we all enjoyed going and having Syrian food and all the rest of it, would we be thinking that we want to get rid of refugees? And why is it that we have, we've got this issue around around immigration in the EU. Well, actually, and people claiming benefits. Well, the actual amount of people who are from the EU claiming benefits in this country is insignificant.
Yeah, but this is it, mate. In a nutshell, you're ignoring ordinary people, you see, because ordinary people don't know that the number is absolutely negligible. They believe in Schrodinger's immigrant coming over here, stealing our jobs and claiming all our unemployment benefits. And if you ignore ordinary people, then you deserve all the punishment you get, you sneering elitist scumbag.
Yeah, but I'm ordinary, you're ordinary.
Everybody's blinking. There you go, Jan. I just reined in a swear word there, just for Jan. It's bespoke radio presenting, one listener at a time. But of course we're all ordinary. That's the point, though, isn't it? That's what populism does. Is it portrays false fears as being somehow legitimate concerns, and that's how you end up with holocausts.
But why don't people want to have their own opinion? Why do they have to take an opinion from one side or another?
There's two answers to that. The first isn't very nice, which is that people want to blame their whole lives on somebody else. And the second is a little bit more charitable, and it's why we have a parliamentary democracy and we don't have a plebiscite every 10 minutes on every issue under the sun. It's because in a parliamentary democracy with a sovereign parliament, which we've had since, well, arguably since Charles II, or before that, actually, arguably since Charles I had his head chopped off. If you have a sovereign parliamentary democracy, you don't have to be making your mind up on every single individual issue. You elect people that you trust to do it on your behalf. But Brexit's torn that up and stuck it in the bin.
It has, and I don't know where we're going to go with it. But would you, if you had a really good job, would you leave it because you didn't like the coffee? Because that's what we've done with Brexit, and without another job to go to, you wouldn't do that.
I believe
but we're applauding it. We're saying what a great thing it is to do that.
Are we still doing that? Is anyone still doing that with a straight face? Even on the 220% tariffs that have been slapped in place? What was it that Trump said to Michael Gove? I'm a big fan of the UK. We're going to work very hard to get it done quickly and done properly. And Gove said at that interview he did with Donald Trump, without telling anyone else, that Rupert Murdoch was sitting in the room, when Gove said, will we be at the front of the queue? And Trump just glossed over it. Are they still saying it's going to be great? They will be, won't they? It's a rhetorical question.
They will be, and the thing is, people won't talk about all the negativity. You talk to someone about Brexit who voted Brexit and who believes in Brexit and hasn't got a sane brain cell, and they will not agree with the facts. It doesn't matter what you say to them. It's your orange and duck thing.
Yes. Well, that's populism. It's an orange. I'm telling you now. It's not a duck. It's an orange. It's literally swimming. It's literally swimming over there. Look, it's swimming over there with a bunch of other ducks. It's an orange, mate.
Yeah, dear.
And do you know what you're doing? You're talking this country down by describing that orange as a duck. It's your fault that duck just sank. It's your fault that duck ended up in a fruit salad, because your sort of negative remoaning is what's dragging this country down, mate. You need to cheer up. Call an orange a duck.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is, when people say to me, you've got to, the people have spoken. Well, actually, I'm the people, and I didn't speak. I didn't even ask for a referendum. I didn't vote Tory.
Yeah,
I didn't want
talking the country down. Talking the country down. Talking the country down. It's an orange, not a duck. I don't know, whatever your insult is being punted out there today. And anyway, how dare you reject populism? If populism says it's an orange, it's an orange. And if there's people standing up telling the people it's an orange and the poor sods believe them, oh yes, it is an orange, hurrah, hurrah. And populism demands that we all pretend it's an orange. 18 minutes after 11. It would make a mockery of one of my favourite dishes. It would be rendered orange à l'orange. Paul's coffee analogy, I suppose it probably should be pronounced cov-feffy, but his idea that you wouldn't leave a good job just because you didn't like the coffee, Neil responds to it by saying, well, you would leave a good job if you were a racist and didn't like hearing foreign languages being used in the elevator. Well, I don't know about that. You'd certainly vote to get the people speaking foreign languages in the elevator somehow hurt or removed from the country, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody who complains about people speaking their mother tongue in public life or on public transport. 22 minutes after 11. Who thinks it's doable now? So we've covered the constituent parts, the disillusionment. It's been nice, actually, because lots of people coming from different pasts recognising the absurdity of the current political landscape. And you should be frightened by it. I hate to be a harbinger of doom, but when there is a sense that people are actively seeking chaos, there's only ever one reason for that. After chaos comes the clampdown. So if you wonder why far-right politicians seem to move effortlessly from immigration to, for example, sexuality, that fellow who's just won in Alabama, Roy Moore, spoken in the past about how homosexuality should be illegal. It's always the same. It's always this authoritarian impulse which they try and pass off as anti-establishment feeling, but really it's a desperate desire not only to become the establishment, but also to become a hugely oppressive and dictatorial authoritarian establishment, and you can only do that if you first have created chaos. We're close to chaos now. There's a brilliant Leave campaigner called Pete North, who I keep meaning, Caroline, you remind me, I want to get him in. I want to start getting in some of these Leave campaigners who are arguing now over whose fault it is that everything's going so horribly wrong. He's done a Twitter feed this morning, which you think Project Fear was bleak. This is from a key Leave campaigner, pointing out that the country could be on its knees within days if there is, for example, a logjam at Dover. You know, if there's a dispute, once we're out of the European Union, and there's a dispute over customs with France, ergo with 27 countries, ergo with the most powerful and populous free market on the planet, international free market on the planet, you get the lorries backing up at Dover. Food won't be on the shelves. It's not me saying this. It's a fellow who was a very, very prominent Leave campaigner. And that, I mean, crikey. We're banging on about fish and passports. They're launching a new think tank today. Daniel Hannan and launching a think tank at the Foreign Office. Boris Johnson's gaffe. It's a think tank dedicated to global free trade. The idea that Britain can be great again. I think it actually says in the PR guff, it actually says Britain was the greatest country in the world because of free trade and can be again. You sit here and you think, this is on the day that America have slapped a 220% tariff on our aircraft parts. On the actual day. I know that's a coincidence, but anybody normal would go, oh, God, how have we ended up launching a global free trade think tank, which is, it would appear, sort of close links to climate change denying organisations. How would we do that? How can we do that? How can we do it with a straight face, guys? They've just put a 220% tariff. We're the guys that said we could have free trade with the Anglosphere. We're the guys that put it out there. We are the guys that said we can leave the European Union because we'll be able to do loads of free trade with people like America. America turn around and say, we're going to put a 220% tariff on that. On the day that we're launching our think tank dedicating to telling people that we were right all along when we said we could have global free trade with countries like America. Riddle me that. Now, of course, if you're still down the bovine Brexit route, your fingers are in your ears now and you're sharpening your knives. The trolls are coming out from under the bridge. We'll do this, we'll do that. I love them, I salute them, duh. But the tariff is there. Even if it gets removed, the fact is, or it gets reduced, which please God it will, because nobody wants people in Northern Ireland to lose their jobs. Nobody. Normal. Then you lead me back to Brexit, where all the people that voted for it display a willingness, or a significant swathe of them describe themselves as quite happy to lose their job or see a family member lose their job for Brexit. Ah, crikey. Anyway, that's enough for that. I want to move on to something else now. Sandy and Matthew are up next. But I've got two phone lines free. Do you think a new party could work? Simple question, regardless of where you come. If you felt alienated from this conversation because you occupy one of those two extremes and you have no interest whatsoever of being dissuaded from it, do you think a new party could work? I don't know. I just think you need so much money to get something off the ground. Not quite as bad as it is in America, but the infrastructure, these constituency Labour parties, these conservative clubs that we drive past and don't really notice, they are the infrastructure of major political parties in this country. You would need to stand 500 plus MPs to have a meaningful chance of making a meaningful difference to British politics. And you'd need to do it in the next 5 years. How likely do you think it is that that could be pulled off? 0345 6060 973. The last party I can remember kind of coming out of nowhere and standing in most constituencies was the Natural Law Party. Do you remember them? The ones that believed in yogic flying. They thought that if you practiced hard enough and sat cross-legged on the floor and bounced up and down, then eventually, through the power of thought, you would be able to take off. I think George Harrison had something to do with it. Could you sort of set up a slightly less bonkers Natural Law Party, centrist, pro-Remain, sensible, workers-orientated? Straight up question, do you think it would work? And if so, where do I sign? Sandy's in Tainmouth. Sandy, what would you like to say?
Hi there. Yeah, I don't know. I've felt politically homeless for the last 20 years or so, but I have to say that since Jeremy Corbyn came into the Labour Party, I've felt very inspired to join Labour, and I think that seems to be reflected throughout the country. I'd certainly say there's been an increase in the last 10 years in voters, and whether or not they're voting Labour, obviously it polarises opinions, and there'll be others voting from the
Wasn't turnout at the last election was quite low, wasn't it, historically?
Oh, no, it was about 10% higher than in 2001.
Yeah, but compared to 2015.
But it's been on the increase since 2000.
Okay, no, I'd take your word for it. It's not something that I've got written down in front of me. But that doesn't necessarily speak of people feeling represented. I voted in the last general election. I've voted in every general election in my life, and I've never felt less represented than I am now.
Same as you, I voted in every general election.
While feeling unrepresented. So the turnout doesn't...
But I think that the increase in the turnout definitely reflects that, doesn't it?
No, I disagree.
People feel more represented.
I think they feel more sort of politicised. We're talking about politics more. That's the silver lining of the current situation. But I mean, look, you're perfectly entitled to say that all the people who've rung in describing themselves as feeling unrepresented politically for the first time in their lives are anomalies, and you represent something...
I don't believe they're anomalies.
Well, what
I'm
then?
talking about generally.
Yeah. So they're not part of a general trend then, but you represent an interesting constituency who a lot of whom have been in touch with me today saying that for the first time in your life you feel that you are politically represented.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I think there's more of a choice now. I think when you had Blair and Brown in charge, it was very little to choose between Conservative and Labour. And now that there's the choice, you'll get people on both sides coming in and saying, well, that's the one for me.
So, I mean, crikey, so... all the right-wing newspapers that crucified Gordon Brown for his obsession with child poverty and Tony Blair for his obsession with university entrance, and they were just, blowing smoke up our backsides because they might as well have been Tories.
Well, it's right-wing newspapers you're talking about, yeah.
Well, I know. I'm just saying that. So, and I bow to nobody in my disdain for those organisations, but they were just pretending not to like Gordon Brown because he was secretly doing things that they really liked.
I would say that they're favouring the Tory party, as they generally tended to do, apart from when...
But why? If they were essentially punting the same policies, why would they do that?
To make sure that they have a right-wing government, surely.
But they had a right-wing government when they were...
As right-wing as possible. I'm not saying that Gordon Brown was more right-wing than the Conservatives, obviously. I'm just saying that they were more to the centre, and now that we've got more of an option, obviously Jeremy Corbyn's come in and moved things away from that.
If we've got more of an option, I am I suppose, essentially leftish. I believe in some redistribution of wealth. I'm not necessarily persuaded by a programme of complete nationalisation. I'd need to see the numbers. I certainly think that we need to have a proper rethink about leaving the European Union, an evidence-based rethink. Who represents me?
Well, in terms of leaving the European Union, that ship sailed, hasn't it? We're leaving the European Union. The document's been signed and we're on the way out.
So who represents all the people that now think it's a mistake, including the ones that voted for it? Including a lot of the major campaigners who are now describing it as everything from a complete shambles to, some words I can't repeat on the radio. It's not a trick question. Who represents me?
Unfortunately, nobody at the moment, because the referendum was called by David Cameron. We've done.
That's only a small part. That's only a small part of what I listed. Inevitably, the Brexit lens distorts everything. But I'm looking at. I lean towards a degree of redistribution of wealth. I think that the state should be regulating so that tragedies like Grenfell become less likely. I think that money should be reinvested into companies and workforces instead of into shareholders and hedge funds. But
that's Labour policy.
Well, it isn't, isn't it? Because the way that the Labour policy reaches the ears of people like Dave, my earlier caller, is that somehow anybody who's done well should be punished for it.
Yeah, but it's reaching the ears of your previous caller through the lens of the right-wing media, as we discussed before. I mean, the Sun and papers like that are going to distort these things to make people think like that. It's not true. We know it's not true.
So you would point out, and I wish I could get on board with this, because I know that it's true, but somehow my cognitive dissonance kicks in, that Jeremy Corbyn's programme, in the context of Middle European or Scandinavian politics, Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't even be considered to be far left, hard left.
Exactly, yeah, it would be more of a centrist ground that he's taking. And it works well for these countries. And the right-wing media in this country see that it's a great threat to what they want in terms of their right-wing policies to be put through by the Conservative government, so they're down on it.
And that's why then, and the people like me who feel unrepresented just haven't woken up yet to the reality of what Corbyn offers.
Potentially, or maybe you're just trying to be objective as you're...
Well, no, you're genuinely not woken up to it, or people like you have fallen for it.
Yeah, you might want to say that, but I would say it's definitely it's an option that people like me are feeling a bit inspired about.
And I'm glad. I mean, crikey, that is the closest thing to a silver lining we've got so far. People who have previously felt unrepresented by sort of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown's brand of Labour, now feeling very represented. And take it as a compliment, Sandy, but with an apology to Simon that I'm 4 minutes late for the news. Do you think Britain could support a new political party? I apologise to my Liberal Democrat friends, but there is absolutely no evidence that it's a breach into which you're going to be able to successfully step. On the Brexit question, of course, that by-election result in Richmond before the general election did suggest briefly that you might have somehow managed to harness that Remain feeling, but my personal view is that the well-meaning perhaps, but ultimately appalling decision of Nick Clegg to enter into coalition with the Conservatives will take generations to heal, because the people who were most offended by it were the youngest voters of all, the ones that had just started at university and had been persuaded by the pledge on tuition fees that was carted up and down the country by Liberal Democrats who abandoned it within moments of stepping over the Downing Street threshold. And I know it's unfair that the Conservatives bloke just as many manifesto promises from 2010 as the Lib Dems did, because the manifestos all got torn up on the moment of the coalition agreement being signed, but that is how the country see it. So they're not going to do it. Do you just straight up, hand on heart, could a new party work? 0345 6060 973. I don't know. I think that we have more homeless people politically than I can remember, and you know, my political consciousness starts really when Margaret Thatcher was in Downing Street. But I don't know whether or not the size of the constituency of the politically homeless is in and of itself enough, although the last caller disputed that it was a huge constituency, in and of itself enough to mobilise an entire new party. 11:40 is the time. Matthew is in Bromley. Matthew, what do you think?
Hi, well, I'm one of those young voters. I'm 21, and I would have voted for the Liberal Democrats.
Yes.
But I just thought, realistically, their reputation is a bit too tarnished amongst students and amongst just the general public anyway. But alternatively, I don't feel like I can vote for the Labour Party either, because I think Jeremy Corbyn just comes across as a bit quixotic, a bit unrealistic in his ambitions. And so, take, for example, with their student loans, or,
yes,
or eradicating that, I just don't think that should be a priority. I think he neglects the fact that we still have a deficit. We're still in major debt, and I would just like for him to be a little bit more responsible.
How do you mean? I don't want to go down the student loans route. He was obviously lampooned for something that he never actually said in an interview with the New Musical Express that was completely ignored really in the run-up to the election, and sort of resurrected as a drum to beat by the Daily Mail after he did so much better than anybody expected. So let's leave that one out of it. What does he do that gives you reservations that, for example, Theresa May doesn't give you? I mean, what makes him look less fiscally responsible than George Osborne or Theresa May?
I think discussions around minimum wage, for example. I think, don't get me wrong, I think people should be paid a fair amount, but I get concerned about small businesses if they're asked to pay more for...
Well, with respect, if you've got a problem with what Jeremy Corbyn thinks about minimum wage, then you're never really likely to vote Labour.
No,
raising the wages of the lowest paid people in society is about as close to an article of faith that you can get for a left-wing political party, surely.
I mean, I suppose so. I was more concerned about issues to do with the student debt, etc. But that aside,
we've established that he never actually said what the right-wing media said that he said about that.
I mean, he alluded to it.
Well, so now we're picking up on a politician for illusions while suggesting that he can't be trusted.
I mean, he did...
Mate, come on, level with me. You were never going to vote Labour in your life.
No, I would. I voted for Labour in the last election.
But you don't like minimum wage. So you voted for Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah, I did.
Fiscally irresponsible. Fiscally irresponsible, Jeremy Corbyn.
It's not like I don't think I can trust him. But equally, I'm equally reserved with the Conservatives because
I don't know why I'm beating you up. I think I'm in a similar position to you are, except on the minimum wage position.
I mean, it's just the level of cognitive dissonance I have at the moment is, but equally with the Conservatives, I look at them and they go on about the economy, how fiscally responsible they are, but inflation's on the rise, wages are stagnating.
And they're moving money, arguably, from people with less to people with more. Could you vote for a new party, then? What would it look like? What would you call it, Matthew? Put you on the spot.
Oh, gosh, I don't know. The Sensible Party.
The Sensible Party. That's almost a definition of nice. Might as well call it the Monster Raving Loony Party. And I mean, just briefly, as a 21-year-old peer group, whatever it is you draw on, do you think the gap is big enough to make that kind of thing a possibility, an entirely new destination?
No.
No.
I think, give Jeremy Corbyn credit. I mean, he is essentially the advent of my political curiosity. He sparked that within me. It's just in the process of that, I went, a lot of this doesn't really appeal to me. It doesn't make sense in my head. I can't rationalise.
And yet, people listening will be surprised to learn that you voted for Jeremy Corbyn after ringing in to kind of criticise his fiscal responsibility. You toe a line when you say stuff like that. It's a line I toe as well, but I do sometimes wonder whether even when you spend half of your life condemning the kind of tropes of the right-wing media, whether by a process of sort of political osmosis you do end up somehow believing them as well. Can you prove that Jeremy Corbyn is a fiscal joke?
I can't, and I've got a lot to learn. But at the same time, nationalisations and another thing. I'm very much a believer that the state should intervene at a minimal amount. It's why I oppose, to a certain extent, the Uber ban. It's because I think it minimises consumer choice. I think it stifles.
No, Uber will be back as long as they start treating allegations of sexual assault properly and treat their workers. Although you're back to your minimum wage thing that you don't like either. Mate, listen, I admire your honesty. In fact, Matthew, come back. I'm going to apologise to you actually for being a little bit overly robust, because what you've done is honestly admit confusion, which most people who ring me don't admit, and I'm giving you a hard time for being confused, and I'm picking over the carcass of your comments, looking for little tasty morsels, but actually you're every man. You're me. You don't have an answer to everything, and you certainly don't think that one politician does. You are the future, Matthew, because more people that can actually say, well, I don't know, actually. I'm not sure. I like this, but I don't like that. That's the opposite of binary, so I apologise to you for being so brutal.
No need. I'd accept nothing less. I love the show.
It's 11:46. Big speech coming up in about 25 minutes' time. The plan is to take it live. It will probably take you into Sheila Fogarty's time zone. So I'll bid you a cautious farewell when Jeremy Corbyn takes to the podium. But of course, I reserve the right to come back like Banquo's ghost and haunt you briefly for 5 minutes before the handover. Jeremy has declined not only to talk to us since becoming leader of the Labour Party, but also, more understandably perhaps, to provide me with a costed and fully audited account of how long his speech is going to take. 3 conferences. You may not have gone in large on the Liberal Democrat one. I've forgotten where it was. Was it in Bournemouth? Labour currently in Brighton. Conservatives due to arrive in Manchester early next week. What if there was a 4th conference? What if there was another party with a realistic chance of winning seats in the House of Commons, a significant number of seats? Where would they fit? Is there a gap big enough to accommodate them? And how plausible does that proposal sound to you? I can't quite believe the diversity of people who recognise my description of being politically homeless. It includes some people that I don't think I would share a political roof with at probably any other time in recent British history. But the combination of Brexit and this increasingly binary division, this increasingly toxic political landscape in which obviously the ancient tactic of blaming foreigners, blaming refugees, blaming immigrants, blaming brown people, blaming Huguenots, blaming Bangladeshis, blaming Jews, blaming Muslims, blaming the Irish, blaming the blacks, blaming the West Indians, blaming the Windrush, blaming whatever it may be. Obviously it's working better than it has at any point since the Second World War? Since the 50s, certainly. And some people are loving every minute of it. But everybody else is just a little bit nonplussed and confused. So on that side, you've got the kind of you describe as a toxic populism, and then you've got the Jeremy Corbyn left-wing idealism, you could charitably describe it as. And then, to my mind, and nothing I've heard today has really changed that, except the couple of callers suggesting that they were politically homeless, but Jeremy Corbyn has given them a home. And I presume you've got people on the other side who feel that way. They're unlikely to ring this programme. I'm sure they'll ring one or other of my colleagues in order to attempt to analyse my position on this. But there'll be some toxic populists who are loving it, you know, the kind of people who are absolutely loving this. I hear people ring me up talking about having dog poo pushed through their letterbox or being told to F off home in the morning, and they're loving it. They're high-fiving each other all the way to the Bundestag. And that's fine too. You're not politically homeless anymore. You feel that your particular brand of ignorant racism is being properly represented in Parliament, and I think you're probably right. But again, what about everybody else? Kate's in Chiswick. Kate, what about you?
Oh, hello. Well, I think we seem to have forgotten that we're a parliamentary democracy. We allowed this ridiculous referendum to happen, and in the process, we've effectively created a situation where 48% of the people actually feel unrepresented.
Yeah, I mean, there are MPs I can point at who would represent your feeling that we shouldn't have done this, and it's probably over 48% now, certainly in terms of...
I think it is, yeah.
But is it that? I mean, because that means it all boils down to Brexit, and I kind of increasingly think...
Well, I think it's bigger. A lot of it does, actually.
Yes, a lot of it does.
The country's so divided, and now we're being distracted from all the problems we've got in our country, which, you know, maybe no worse than any other country, but they are still problems with the NHS, with education, and we can't get on with that because we keep debating Brexit. I mean, every time you switch the TV on, you hear people bleating on about Brexit.
Yeah, and the radio. I make no apology for that.
Yeah, I mean, we're making it worse, aren't we?
I slightly resist a depiction of the verb bleating. I prefer providing coruscating, perspicacious analysis, but we can go with bleating if that's the word.
That's right for your programme, I think.
If that's the word that you've chosen. But what is the debate about now? Because I've kind of shot my bolt on this. People don't really ring me up anymore to tell me that they think it's all going well, because they know that they won't be able to get away with it. So people who still might think that it's going well, what are they telling? What are you hearing? What kind of nonsense are they coming out with now?
Well, I don't think anyone thinks anything's going well.
No, they must do. They must do, because the polling, even the poll this weekend that had 52% Remain, that means 48% still want to leave. Are they going to all buy into the idea that it could have gone brilliantly, but it's all gone wrong because of, I don't know, Lily Allen?
Yeah, I think that's the people who just can't admit that they may have made a mistake, and that they agreed to take a decision without having any of the facts in front of them. I mean, none of us knew what we were voting for.
I know, but now you're talking the country down.
Now we know what's going to happen, but it's too late, isn't it?
What is going to happen?
Well, the whole country is going to become like this, an actual island, rather than just being a geographical island. We're going to be an economical and social island. I mean, that's not going to help anyone, is it?
No, all right.
Who's going to do the jobs in Costa Coffee? You know, no person from this who's originally from this country is going to agree to live in a bedsit for 3 years with 12 other people and then get paid minimum wage. It's true, though. It's foreigners will do that, because it's not their real life.
Well, I don't know if I want anybody doing that, actually. I suppose that might be the middle ground. I don't want anybody reduced to those sort of circumstances.
I don't want them to do that, but the only reason they'll do it is because they know they can then hopefully eventually go back home having learnt English and come back with a new skill.
Yes.
So I would put up with not the best conditions if I were to go.
And when I was young, I would have done. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, not with a family and such, but for a lot of those people who work in those jobs, you know, I'm grateful to them because they're actually doing stuff that no one here would want to do for that amount of money, and no one would want the living conditions they've got. But what about the people? What about the people who say it's not about immigration? And there are plenty of people who voted to leave who insist it was all about sovereignty, for example. Well, what does that actually mean? I'm asking the question. I just don't get it. You know, of course we can be sovereign of our own country, and people seem to forget that, you know, it's about EU's about freedom of labour, not necessarily freedom of movement. We could have put a few stops in to stop certain people coming in who we felt weren't actually going to contribute to the country. No, I know we could have done, but there is a difference between freedom of labour and freedom of movement. Well, you know this. Did you know that before the referendum? Be honest with me, Kate. I never questioned it. No, nor me. I didn't know anything about the EU really before the referendum. I only got interested in it because I thought, well, I've got to vote, and I'm not going to vote blindly.
And that's the problem, isn't it?
That's
Is
what
that
we all did.
everybody else did. Where are we going to go next? Would you vote for a new party, the Kate and Chiswick party?
Oh, well, no, I don't want to get involved in any of that.
Oh, well, it's a figure of speech. I don't mean you have to be in charge. I just want the vote.
Yeah, I want to vote for someone who feels like I do, that basically it's all a bit of a waste of time doing this Brexit business.
Who says it isn't now? Because, I mean,
talking about it.
What I normally do now is I put on the hat of the Brexiter and I say, don't be ridiculous, we're not going to be an island. America is going, we're going to do wonderful trade deals with America.
Well, they don't want us now, do they? Look at what happened this morning.
All right,
I think
Japan.
We're stuck. Honestly, I think we're. I think
you did say stuck
we're like
then.
This empirical power.
You said stuck then, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Thank God for that.
Oh, I did say stuck.
Yes. Not empirical, you prune. Imperial.
Imperial.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. That's okay. Emotions running.
Imperial power. I mean, we're just not. We don't have the power we used to have. Yeah, everyone speaks English and everyone knows who our queen is and all that. But it's not the same as it used to be.
But you're talking the country down.
Well, I'm not. I'm just saying let's just accept, we are a great country and lots of people want to come here.
If it's going badly, it's because of people like you.
Is it?
Brexit could have been brilliant if people like you weren't talking the country down, you Ramona.
Yeah, that's right. I'm complete Ramona.
It's your fault.
No.
I have it on impeccable authority that whenever I dismantle a Brexiter on this programme, Michel Barnier thinks that his negotiating position has been demonstrably strengthened. It's absolutely proven scientifically that people in this country, punting evidence and facts, are strengthening the hand of the European Union negotiators. And I blame you, Kate.
Oh, no, it's linear.
I'm putting you on the list. Seriously. It's coming up to 12 noon. Jeremy Corbyn is coming up to the podium in about 15 minutes. Caroline and I weren't sure whether we'd get more than 5 minutes out of this conversation. It's a bit of a personal enthusiasm of mine. Do we need a new political party? Looking at the screens, we could carry on till Friday. We will be at the front of the queue for a full and free trade deal with the United States of America, said people who today will be pretending not to notice that America has just stuck a 219% tariff on British aircraft parts. I've got one phone line free and I've got Jeremy Corbyn waiting in the wings to deliver his keynote address to the Labour conference, and I've got a very honest understanding of why you might not want to do this, but I'm going to keep one phone line free between now and Jeremy Corbyn commencing his speech. Can you put a positive spin on the Bombardier story from a Brexit point of view? 0345 6060973. Is it my fault, for example, that America have put 219% tariffs on Bombardier on an aircraft that we were hoping to sell to them? Is it my fault? Is it J.K. Rowling's fault? Could you explain to me why it's actually Jean-Claude Juncker's fault that Donald Trump's administration have put a 219% tariff on this aircraft? Could you explain to me how actually it's all down to Lily Allen or Ramonas or complainers or libtards or get over it, you lost? Could you just give me a call? I'm going to keep line 7 free. It's my lucky number. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Just sell this to me. Don't ring in to take the mickey. I've been enough mickey taking. Call me now and tell me how this is. Tell me either why it's somehow not bad news, why it's somehow the fault of people who are not persuaded by the idea that when we leave the European Union, America will somehow come to our rescue, or how it is actually good news. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. I'm tempted not even to engage in a conversation, just to give you free rein to paint whatever it is you want to paint onto your canvas. So it's good news that America has put 219% tariffs on British aircraft. 0345 6060973. Liam's in Sidcup. I'm not going to make you rise to that challenge, Liam, because you were already on hold. What did you want to say?
Yeah, no, I don't think I could even begin to start that challenge.
Right, I might. I said almost as a parlour game. I reckon I could now these days. I've watched them all so closely. I know exactly how they operate. Somehow blame it on immigrants. That would be the starting point. But we digress, Liam. What did you ring in to tell me about the potential new party?
A potential new party. So I think, first off, there isn't actually any room for a third party to really sweep into power. And even if it did, I just don't think it would matter. I think we need to get rid of first past the post before we can really start talking with any genuine interest about people who are politically homeless. Because I'm in a similar position to some of your other callers. I'm a man of the left. I support Corbyn. I didn't feel represented until he came onto the scene. but now you don't feel represented. So if another centrist party somehow destroys Labour in the next election, or maybe even the Tories, then there'd be another huge swathe of the population that feel politically homeless, and I just don't think that's healthy.
No, I'd overlooked this point, that of course Corbyn's popularity and Corbyn's unexpectedly positive election results speaks of a number of people who found a home in British politics who didn't have one previously. Is there nothing to be said? I don't mean having your cake and eating it, but I mean, would it not be possible to combine some of what you like about what he represents? And I sort of stopped myself patronising you there by saying what you think he represents, and now I've ruined that by saying it out loud anyway. Is there no way of combining some of what you think he represents with stuff that might be a little more centrist or even a little bit more conservative?
Well, there's definitely a possibility for that, but I'm not sure I'd want it.
Is it all about Brexit then? I mean, because I think I want somebody to do what Sadiq Khan did yesterday and just have enough trust in the British people to say that now that we've got more information in front of us, we should have another vote.
Well, that would be my ideal position. I don't agree with every aspect of Corbyn's Labour, but I feel more represented by them than any other party at the moment. I'm 23,
yes,
grown up in the Blair years.
Yes.
So any political party in my lifetime, I haven't been represented more by any of them.
What would you say your priorities are? What are your key? I just need to say line 7 is still empty, so anybody from the box of trolls tuning in every day, playing your bingo, complaining that we vet calls or he never lets anyone on, except all those people he gets the better of, and they carefully select them because they're all so stupid. Give me a ring now. Tell me how it's good news that America's slapping tariffs on these planes. 0345 606 0973. Sorry, Liam. What are your political priorities that you feel hadn't been accommodated until Jeremy Corbyn came along?
Well, a real living wage for a start, not the Osborne pittance that they've thrown us.
It's funny because the last 21-year-old who rang in, you heard him, also voted for Corbyn in the last general election, and that was one of the things he wasn't happy with. It's just pointing it out.
Very strange position. I'm not really sure about that.
So just a higher lowest wage is the simplest way of putting it.
A higher lowest wage, a more redistributive tax system.
How do you respond to the Daily Mail line that the top X% of earners, the top 1% are already paying 27% of all income tax? I've made up those numbers, but you know the rhetorical point that I'm alluding to.
Yeah, I understand the point, but when there's this level of wealth disparity, I just don't think it's good enough. And besides, I think when you let people kind of decide how rich they feel, then everyone doesn't feel rich enough to pay more. But objectively they are.
Yes.
So I think we need a government strong enough to say we don't care if you feel wealthy enough. You've got proportionally a huge amount of the.
So this is if you like the Daily Telegraph school of politics, where and I can fall into this trap a little myself for a variety of reasons. I'm 20 odd years older than you, which I hope is the main one. But when people say it's actually not that easy to get by on a joint income of £100,000 a year, you're suggesting, well, okay, it might not be, but it's a hell of a lot easier than it is to get by on 15 grand a year. So button your lip until we've sorted out the people on 15 grand a year, and then when that's done, we might be able to have a look at you at some point further down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think.
Do you think I'm a closet Corbynista? I just haven't woken up to it yet.
It's possible. I'm holding a bit of hope out for you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, comrade. Abdi's in Finchley. Abdi, a new party, could it work? Unless, of course, you're here to tell me why the Bombardier tariffs are a good thing.
No, James, I don't think so. First-time caller.
Carry on.
I'm a bit nervous, so do excuse me.
Of course.
And James, I just wanted to say earlier, I was listening to you, and I think both Mr. Corbyn and Mrs. May are in the wrong shoes. And I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones and the War of the Bastards. Sorry to say that, but what I'm trying to say is, and Mrs. May is trying to prove that she's in favour of Brexit here.
Yes.
And Mr. Corbyn is proving to us and Labour supporters that he's a Remainer.
Yes. And we wonder why the rest of us are all so confused.
Exactly. There's to say a legitimate son, he will always prove to be the righteous one.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they're playing. And I think that would have an extremely bad, it will hit us badly, because why? Mrs. May, just to prove the Conservative and the Brexiteers that she's with them, she will do anything just to satisfy them.
What do you think's driving her? I know this isn't what you rang in to say, but she can't really think she's in with a realistic chance of winning, possibly even fighting the next general election. What do you think? Do you think she is embarked? I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she is doing something selfless. She believes that holding the party together at this very difficult time in British history is so important that she's prepared to suffer immense reputational damage. What do you think's driving her when she lies awake in bed at night and Mr. May says to her, "Why are you doing this, darling?" What do you think she says in return?
Simple. She wants to be she wants to be on that seat. She wants to be the Prime Minister. And
just ambition, regardless of anything else, principle or...
Exactly, because before and we have the Brexit, and remember how she was fighting that we should remain and we will lose so many things. And today was one of the things, the Bombardier, what the American done was a slap on the face to us and say, yeah, thank you, come and join us, the World Trade Organization. This is what we're going to do to you. So imagine what's to come after. We haven't left Britain and Europe yet. So what do you think is going to happen when we leave?
And this is, I suppose that's the silver lining, is that if you were ringing me up to tell me why the Bombardier thing is good news, you could say because all the people who think that WTO rules are the future now have to shut up. But that isn't necessarily quite what I had in mind.
No, this is what's happening, and I think we're going to have another 4 more years of Mr. Trump, and let's just get ready to get things to get worse every year and every day.
Yeah, well, you're a cheerful fellow, Abdi. You're listening to the right programme. Here's the question, is how can people who told us that American trade would replace the gaps left by leaving the European Union portray what's happened today with regard to tariffs as a positive? I think David in Northampton is going to rise to the challenge. Why is it good news, David?
All right, James. Well, I wouldn't frame it that way.
Well, that's the question I've asked, mate. Don't waste everybody's time.
Okay, mate, all right. I think that you can't take the single event of a tariff and then say that somehow indicates whether we will or won't get a deal with the US.
No, you need to explain to me why what's happened today is good news.
Right. Well, I don't think that applying a tariff on the Bombardier plane is good, but the EU has external tariffs already. So
you need to explain to me why what's happened today is good news and why people who said we'd be able to do a free and easy trade deal with America, when America protect their interests in this fashion against British-built products, is somehow a positive, David.
Yeah, well, the EU protect their interests with an external tariff, so you're ignoring that. No,
I'm not, David. You're ignoring the question that I'm asking. I think you've done this before. Just explain to me how it's good news.
This tariff on the Bombardier plane is not good for the manufacturers in Belfast. Just like any manufacturer, this is blocked by EU external tariffs, which you ignore.
Oh, mate. I suppose I should pat you on the head for trying, but we both know it was a waste of both our times. So nobody can explain how the tariffs introduced today in Belfast are a good thing on a Canadian-owned, Quebec-based company. Donald Trump is, of course, going to give us... What was it? We'll have it all done and dusted. We'll be front of the queue. We'll get a wonderful trade deal. And then little annoying people like me said, hang on, his Secretary of State for Business has said that Brexit's going to offer America a wonderful opportunity to cherry-pick loads of commercially advantageous opportunities from Britain. This has nothing to do with Brexit. In the first instance, they haven't slacked the tariffs on because of Brexit. It's interesting in the context of Brexit because of all the people who claimed that we'd be able to do some sort of wonderful new business with America, while America was simultaneously arguing pretty passionately that they were going to be looking after themselves and nobody else. Stand by for Jeremy Corbyn's keynote speech at the Labour Party conference in Brighton. That's due to start imminently. The longer it takes him to get going, the less likely it is that I will have the opportunity of bidding you a fond farewell at the end of today's programme. It may well be that as it comes to a close, so Sheila Fogarty's programme begins. So just to give you a heads up on that. Andy in Falkirk, I can't tell whether he's being serious or not, but he's had a crack at explaining why the Bombardier tariffs are actually good news, in the way that all those people who told us that when we leave the European Union, America will put us at the front of the queue for wonderful trade deals. It's good news because it helps protect US interests, which would prioritise any any trade deals with the UK. This is Mr. Trump trying to deliver on his promise to make America great again and put America first. He can only help the UK from a position of a strong American economical climate first. I've got a horrible feeling you are being serious, which kind of overlooks the fact that he's already said that a deal with the European Union is a bigger priority than a deal with the United Kingdom. And he also somewhat overlooks the fact that the economy he inherited from Barack Obama was pretty much the strongest in living memory. But hey, onwards and upwards. Theo Ushwood is in Brighton, so that you don't have to be. Theo, everything under control?
A quick update, James,
Please.
on the Bombardier story, because the Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, has just released a very short statement saying that Boeing's behaviour could jeopardise future defence contracts with the company. Of course, Bombardier facing a tariff of 219% following the decision by the US authorities, and that's the update. Prime Minister Theresa May has said she's bitterly disappointed. But back here in Brighton, the shadow cabinet have taken their places on the stage. Jeremy Corbyn greeted his supporters in the queue. There was a very interesting scene just before Jeremy Corbyn got his hugs and kisses from the Labour faithful. A certain Charles Clarke, remember him? He was once had a shot at being Prime Minister. He was former Home Secretary. He walked past this crowd of Labour supporters, very much yesterday's man. Nobody turned around to say, "Oh, hello, Charles, how are you?" All forgotten, all done, all dusted. But in the next few moments, we are expecting the lights to go down. I expect we'll start to hear the baseline of the White Stripes, Seven Nation Army.
Do they actually use that now as a thing?
They did at the Momentum event on. It was very dramatic, actually.
What came first, the chant or the theme tune? Because
the theme tune. So the way it's stage managed, and the way I imagine it will be stage managed today, is the lights go down. You then have dry ice pumped out from different corners of the stage. The bass line kicks in. And then through the dry ice appears a bearded man of about...
I know that. I'm making it sound like Santa's Grotto. But did they use it as a theme tune before Glastonbury, or is
yes? Well, it came up at Prenton Park at Tranmere Rovers ground. That was when it was first ever sung. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn.
Right. So it was. So it's people. It's come from the people, and it's now being adopted by the party. That's all I'm trying to establish, mate. Flipping out. It's not exactly rocket science. Anyway, where were you?
It was even sung by Tom Watson.
Yeah, we've parked that now. No one cares. What were you talking about the shadow cabinet? Charles Clarke, Jeremy Corbyn.
Charles Clarke walked in. Nobody recognised him. He walked in. He's sort of looking harumphed in. Somebody carried an EU flag into the building. Nobody knows. I don't think they're going to be allowed in the actual main conference centre itself. Jeremy Corbyn's going to stand up. He's going to speak for about 45 minutes in terms of what we know he's going to say. He's going to say the Labour Party is ready for government. And he's got this line. It's a really interesting line, because I was reading through the extracts, and he's going to tell Theresa May, pull yourself together or just go.
Yes.
And I don't know, do you remember the last PMQs that happened between David Cameron and Jeremy Corbyn before the European Union referendum? And the payoff line, it was after the European Union referendum, it was, the payoff line was David Cameron to Jeremy Corbyn, for goodness sake, man, just go.
Yes, of course. So the boot's on the other foot now.
The boot is on the other foot. Penny for David Cameron's thoughts. I don't think he'll be watching it on the telly at home. There's also an interesting, and I think this is a particularly interesting line, and it might draw some critics. Jeremy Corbyn's going to issue quite strong words towards Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader in Burma, to deal with the Rohingya crisis. No doubt, I'm sure there will be some conservative critics who say, well, if he can issue such a strongly worded statement towards Aung San Suu Kyi, who has been in the past a standard bearer for the human rights cause, then why can't he say the same towards the Venezuelan ambassador who dodged a meeting last night here at a fringe event in Brighton?
Are we just filling time now until he appears on the podium?
Am I doing a bad job?
No, you're doing brilliantly. I just have a peculiar relationship with honesty when it comes to my listeners. I don't like to pull the wool over their eyes. I like them to know exactly what's
James,
going on.
if you want me to step aside, just bring in those calls. Get somebody to explain why the Bombardier thing's a good idea.